All right, guys, so this is lesson 26, and we're dealing with quadratics. Take your highlighter right here, guys, and I want you to highlight the word quadratic, okay? I feel like maybe there was a problem that was on the test that talked about a quadratic, and I kind of thought, I don't know if they know what a quadratic is by their answer. So tell me what a quadratic is. What is it? It's a parabola, okay? So it's going to look like this. And the equation would be y equals, and it'd have some kind of x, and what would the exponent of the x be? A 2. Here's one more question. What's the maximum number of solutions to that equation? 2, because it's an x squared. Could have 2, could have 1, could have 0. Okay, so just keep that straight. Okay, what I would really love you to do right now is to just don't write and look up, okay? What I'm about to say for the next 2 minutes, I think is the key to success for today's entire lesson, okay? Okay, so we look right here. That's one term, just an x. If I put a 2 in front of it, is that one term or is that 2 terms? It's just one term. If I was dividing that by 2, I have one term over one term. So I only have to worry about 2 people, 2 terms. Does 2 go into both of those terms? Yes. So could I reduce that? Yes, I could. And my answer would be an x. Who says I understand that? Okay. Now look if it looked like this. 2x plus 1 over 2. How many people are in that situation now? We've got 3 people, okay? They're not people, they're terms. But I always say people, and it just seems to make sense to my students. So look, here's a person, here's a person, here's a person. And the second I put it up, I saw people go, no, because they knew exactly what I was going to say. Can I cancel? I cannot cancel those 2's because it's what? It's rude. Who is it rude to? It's rude to the 1. You're excluding the 1. So if you're going to divide, you have to divide by everybody. Who says I understand that? Okay, one more thing I want to say. If you see x plus the square root of 2, in many regards, not all regards, but in many regards, a square root functions just like a variable. So really, that x plus the square root of 2 functions just like x plus y in many regards, okay? So if you had this, everybody look right here. If you had 2 square root of 3, and that was over 6, how many people in that picture? Tell me. 2 people. Your brain sees 2y over 6. That square root of 3 is not going to change. But can I reduce it? I can. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 6 3 times. Can I now reduce those 3's? Can I or can't I? Now it's starting to get a little fuzzy, huh? The answer is you cannot, because 1's in and 1's out. So I cannot do that. Who says I understand that? Okay, look right here. 2 square root of 3 plus 1 over 4. I feel like we're getting a little fuzzy, so focus really closely. How many people are in that picture? 3. Your brain sees 2y plus 1 over 4. Can I reduce it? No. It's rude. Who's it rude to? It's rude to the 1. If this were a 10, could I reduce? Yes, I could. Look. There's a person, 2 goes into 2. Here's a person, 2 goes into 10. There's a person, 2 goes into 4. So I would reduce it to the square root of 3 plus 5 over 2, and that would be fine. Who says I understood that? Raise your hand. Okay, all that I just said, man, if you really understand it, this lesson, you're home free for sure, because I think that's the toughest. One more thing I want to say. 1 x to the first plus 1 over 1. I have 4 1's in that problem. only one of the 4 has to be there. The other 3, I could drop them off. They don't have to be there. If you put them there and they're not supposed to be there, you'll still get credit. That's full credit right there. It's awkward, but it's full credit. Someone raise your hand and tell me one of the ones that doesn't have to be there and why. I want the why to go with it.
The exponent, because it's only 1, so like you only see 1.
Yeah, if you have an x, it's automatically x to the first. Very good. Another one, buddy.
The one on the bottom being divided.
Yeah, if you have the number 5 and you divide it by 1, still a 5. It didn't change it. One more of those ones is not necessary. It's okay. Which one? The one with the x. Why, honey?
Because x is over
So she started to say the x is automatically to the first power, and then she backed it off, and then she said multiplied by 1.
Yeah.
So if you have 5 and you multiply it by 1, it's still 5, so it doesn't matter. So the one that had it to stay there is the one that's added. If it was subtracted, it would have to stay there. Because if you have 5 and you add 1, do you still have a 5? No, it has to be there. It changes it. Who says I understand? Okay, let's do it. All those things are super, super important. Okay, look right here. 6 plus 3 over 2. Look what this person did. They said 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 6 3 times, so that's 3 plus 3, which is 6. It's rude. It's wrong and it's rude. Who is it rude to? The 3. So, sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Oh, don't you hate me? Oh, excuse me. Thank you. So what that really is 6 plus 3 is 9 over 2, and that's what that's equal to. Okay? Okay, everybody, look at this guy right here. How many people in that picture? Talk to me. 3 people. Look right here, guys. Person, person, person. I want your brain to see this. Everybody write it down. -2 plus or minus y over 4. I know that I bet just about everybody, if not everybody, can answer this question. For this guy right here that's in the box, can I cancel the 2 and the 4? No, you can't do that. Why? It's rude. Who's it rude to? The y. It's exactly the same right there. It's rude. Who's it rude to? The square root of 6. Can't do it. Because there's not a 2 out there, or a 4, or a 6, or an 8, or something like that. Who says got you? Okay, look at this guy. Everybody in the room. How many people are we talking about? 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Why don't you grab your highlighter and highlight those people so you can see them? Can I reduce?
Yes.
You can. Because the numbers are 4 and 2 and 6. And 2 goes into all of them. So you go 2 goes into 4 2 times. 2 goes into 2 1 time. Square root of 3 is like a y. It never changes. 2 goes into 6 3 times. There's my answer. That answer is a little awkward, right? But is it full credit?
Yeah.
It's full credit. So if you have any doubt what ones to get rid of and what ones not to get rid of, write them. I'd rather be awkward than lose points. You know what I mean? So do I have to write that one? Everybody? No. Because 1 times the square root of 3 is just the square root of 3. Okay? Okay, awesome. Okay, look at question 1a. So the first thing we need to do is to see if we can break down that 10. So everybody write down the 10 and split it into 2 times 5. I don't have any pairs, okay? And how many people in this picture? 3 people. Look, person, person, person. Off to the side, I want you to write down 5 plus or minus y over 15, because that's what it is. What am I going to ask you right now? Can you reduce those, right? And what's the answer? No, you cannot. So the answer is just what you started with. You cannot reduce those because there's no number in front of the square root of 10 that 5 goes into. Okay? Next guy. Everybody in the room. How many people? 3. Person, person, person. Your brain sees this. Go off to the side and write 3 plus or minus 6y over 12. Can you reduce that guy? Yes, because every person, all 3 terms, 3 goes into. So your answer is 1 plus or minus 2 square root of 10 all over 4. Look right here. Very common mistake. Watch. If you add 1 to 5, have you changed it? If you have 5 and you add 1, did I just change it? Tell me, guys. Yes. So can I drop off that 1 that's added? No, it has to stay. That's the guy that always has to stay, the one that's added or subtracted. Who says gotcha? Okay, look at C. Somebody tell me, you guys tell me, what would step 1 be? The 8, yes, simplify the 8. So everybody do this with me. 8 is 2 times 4, 4 is 2 times 2. So these two 2's come out as a single 2. So now I have negative 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 2 all over 20. Right now, go off to the side and write down how I want you to see it. Write it off to the side. What you should have written is negative 2 plus or minus 2y over 20. Who says that's what I wrote? Okay, yay. See, now you know. Can I reduce it? Yes, 2 goes into everything. So it's negative 1 plus or minus 1 square root of, do I make that a square root of 1? No, don't mess with the square root. He never changes. All over 10. Is the 1 in front of the square root of 2 necessary? No. Is the negative 1 in front of the plus or minus, is that necessary? Yeah. Yes, it is. There's your answer. Who says, I totally get this. This is easy. Yay. Okay. So, question 2. Let's ignore all those words and let's just solve it. I actually kind of hate that those words are there because I think you're not going to get the words when you do it. So, I know I'm going to have to factor this. So, step 1 is to get a 0. So everybody go 3x to the second minus x minus 7 equals 0. From last time's lesson, we're going to go 3x and plain x. The negative in front of the 7 tells you that you are subtracting and that the signs are different. The only options are 7 and 1. So it could be like this, 7 and 1. That gives me 21 and 1. Which subtracts to give me 20. So that's not it. Okay, so how about if I did 7 and 1? That would give me 7x and 3x, which gives me 4x. So it doesn't work. And I tried all the options. So this doesn't factor. Who says I can see that that doesn't factor? So then you say, okay, what do I do? Well, some people are like, well, if it doesn't factor, then the answer is no solution. Doesn't work. Is that correct? No. How else can you solve a quadratic formula? Yep, come down here, grab your highlighter, and highlight that right there. That is the quadratic formula. You need to make sure that you have it memorized, okay? Okay, now go back to our problem. And this is actually review. You did this a couple of lessons ago, okay? Look at that equation that we have written down. And off to the side, write this down for me, guys. The value of A is a 3. The value of B is a negative 1. And the value of C is a negative 7. So now you're going to plug it into that equation. So everybody go x equals, take your B, which is a negative 1, change the sign. That's a 1. Plus or minus the square root of B squared. Everybody freeze right here. Okay? Freeze, freeze, freeze for 2 seconds. Have I been teaching for a long time or a little bit? A long time. Here's a weird statement. I've been teaching longer than you've been alive. So you're 17 or 18. I've been teaching for 29 years. About 12 to 13 years longer than you've been alive. Okay? So you have to trust me. Okay? Watch right here. Don't write anything. Negative 1 squared. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's just an accident waiting to happen. So don't do it. What I want you to do is to figure out what negative 1 squared is. What is negative 1 squared? 1. That front number will always be positive. I never want you to write it as anything squared. Figure it out in your head. Okay? Minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is a negative 7, all over 2 times a, that's 2 times 3, which is a 6. Okay, everybody look right here. I made two errors on purpose. One is annoying, and the other one is points off. Somebody tell me one thing I did wrong. Go ahead, honey. The division doesn't include the 1. Do you think that's annoying, or do you think that's points off? It is points off. It's a big difference. So this guy has to go all the way over. There's one more thing that's annoying.
Yeah, you didn't make the negative 4 times 3 times negative 7. You didn't make it like you didn't actually.
I didn't pull it all in the root. So this thing is supposed to go like that. Okay? That's correct. Okay. I want you to take your highlighter and I want you to highlight these numbers that are inside there. And then I want you to draw an arrow. I'm not joking. I bet 30% of the time people get that number wrong. I don't know why. Because it's multiplying and adding or subtracting. It is so commonly missed, it makes me crazy. So we're not going to miss it. Nobody in this room is going to miss it, because look what you're going to do. Write a note to yourself, put an asterisk, and I want you to write down, put in my calculator. So you didn't write it as something squared, and you're going to just stick that thing right in your calculator. Okay, so grab your calculator and go 1 minus 4 parenthesis, 3, close it, parenthesis, negative 7, close it, enter, and you get 85. So now underneath that, write x equals. You have to write x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 85 all over 6. Now, we might not be done. What am I talking about? We might not be done. 85, right? So take your 85. I know that 5 goes into it, right? So if I go 85 divided by 5, I get 17. Those are both prime. I don't have any pairs. There's my answer, and I'm done.
So for your answer, do you need the x equals?
Yes, leave it just like that. Yep. Okay, let's go for number 3. The second I look at number 3, I say, well, this is weird. Immediately, I look at it and I'm like, ugh, makes me feel uncomfortable. Why? Tell me.
Because the negative 5 is like the C is before the B.
Yeah, so it's in the wrong order, right? You're welcome. So let's reorder it so it's correct, okay? So everybody write down 2x to the second plus 5x minus 5 equals 0. I'm just going to save us some time. The first thing I would check is if it factors. I'm going to save you some time and tell you that it doesn't factor, okay? So everybody go x equals. B is 5. Negative b means change the sign. So it's negative 5. Plus or minus the square root of. Should I write 5 squared?
No.
Please don't. What do I write? 25. Minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is a negative 5. Pull that radical all the way over. Then it's a big long line. 2 times 2 is 4. Okay? Highlight that, or if you don't have to highlight if you don't want to, but I'm putting that in. So everybody go 25 minus 4 parenthesis 2, close it, new parenthesis, negative 5, close it, enter. And now I have x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 65 all over 4. I might be done, I might not be done. We got to check that 65. So 65 is 5 times 13. And those are both prime, so I'm done. Now, read the directions. The directions say write it as a decimal as well. You guys, do you see on the top how you have 2 terms? You have to tell the calculator that they're all divided by 4, so you have to put parentheses around it. Okay, so everybody do this with me. Everybody go parenthesis. Do this with me because I'm going to show you a couple of things. Negative 5 plus seconds x squared 65. Freeze right there. How many closes do you think we have to do? 2. 1 for the radical, 1 for the top. Then go divide 4. I want to store it. So hit store, enter. Round it to 3 places. You get x equals 0.766. Don't worry about the storing. I'll explain why I stored it in a second. You don't have to store it. Look what we're going to do now. You don't have to put the whole thing back in. Everybody hit up. Then go right, right, right. Now you should be on top of the plus that's in front of the 65. Make it a negative. Then I'm going to hit, you know what? It's going to store it. It's going to override. If you arrow to the right, do you see how I stored it in as A? So let's make it a B. Okay, so everybody hit store, right, enter, and I got an error. Did you get an error? Okay. So I shouldn't have stored it. I'm sorry. I was just trying to save us a step. Let's put it in as a negative. Let's start over. So everybody go parenthesis, -5 minus second x squared, 65. Close it, divide 4, store, right, enter. And I got -3.266. Does anybody have any idea why I stored them? What do you think you can do? Every time you solve and you have x equals something, you can check it. Yeah. So I'm just trying to set us up to be able to check it. So grab your calculator and everybody do this. 2 membar enter x squared minus 5 plus 5 membar enter. I got a 0. Now I'm going to check the b. Now I'm going to check the b that I stored. So I go 2 membar right enter x squared minus 5 plus 5 membar right enter, and I got a 0. So I stored them in as A and B. I plugged them both back in, and I got a 0. Okay? Who says gotcha?
Wait,
Let's see.
you plug it into the, okay.
Plugged it into the original.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Raise your hand up high if you followed me. Give me some feedback. How we doing? You okay? Okay. Let's omit the story, and I feel like I kind of confused you a little bit. Okay. It's not going to factor. So everybody go x equals. B is a -4. Change the sign, 4. Plus or minus the square root of, please, 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 don't write -4 squared. Write what? 16. Minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is 1, all over 2 times 1, which is a 2. Grab your calculator. Put that in your calculator. When you do, you get x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 12 over 2. Are we done?
No.
What do we do?
See the 12.
The 12, right? So 12 is 2 times 6. 6 is 2 times 3. These two 2's come out. So you have x equals 4 plus or minus 2 square root of 3 all over 2. Now you're going to start understanding why we started the lesson the way we did. How many people do I have? 3. Can I reduce? Yes. 2 goes into 4 2 times. 2 goes into 2 1 time. Square root of 3. 2 goes into 2 1 time. Is that answer right there right or wrong? It's right. It's awkward. Who cares? It's right. Okay. Here, this one is divided by 1. Don't need it. This one is multiplied by 1. Don't need it. There you go. Let's write it as a decimal. Okay. Everybody go 2 plus second x squared 3, close it, enter, and I get 3.732. Does it say 3 digits, guys? Okay. Now I'm going to show you the proper way to do the up stuff. So everybody go up, then go right. You should be on top of the plus. Make it a negative, hit enter, and you get 0.268. Absolutely checkable. Okay? Okay. 2 more questions and we're done. Did you just get here?
Yeah, and I checked in.
You checked in? Perfect. You're great. Okay. Find the x-intercept, find the y-intercept. You guys remember, hopefully, that x-intercepts have to be written as an ordered pair, as do y-intercepts. So to find the x-intercept, you let y be 0. To find the y-intercept, you let x be a 0. So let's set ourselves up. Okay? You guys, look how easy the y-intercept is. Look right here. If x is a 0, this goes away, and this goes away. What do I have left? -1. Super easy. Okay? To find the x-intercept, you're going to let y be 0. So everybody go 2x to the second minus x minus 1 equals 0. Now I want you to freeze right here. We're going to talk for a second, okay? If this factors, I think it's easier to factor than to use quadratic formula. Who says I agree? Okay. Sometimes the numbers are so big, like 32 and 48 and 16. Those are big. I don't want to sit and try to factor that if those numbers are horrible, right? Freeze for a second. If you're writing, I want you to stop for a second, okay? Please. If this factors, and I didn't know, and I used the quadratic formula, is there a problem with that? There's not a problem with that. We're going to do it both ways. It factors. I can tell it factors. Guys, look. The 2 is going to go to a 2 and a 1. The 1 goes to a 1 and a 1. 2 and 1 subtract to give me 1. So I can tell it's going to factor. Okay, so let's factor. So 2x a second goes to a 2x and a plain x. You guys, if you don't write equals 0 right there, you're writing what kind of sentence did I tell you? Incomplete. Don't be incomplete sentence person. Okay, 1 and 1. That is 2 and 1, which subtract to give me 1. The biggest is the negative. So the negative goes there, and the positive goes there. Now, when I set 2x plus 1 equal to 0, I asked someone yesterday what that 2x plus 1 gives me, and they said -1, and the -1 gives me a +1. And I was so happy when that happened because it's a common mistake. That first solution is not -1. It's what, guys? -1 over 2. You have to remember to divide. Okay, so this is going to be -1/2, 0, and 1, 0, and you're done. Okay, now we're going to do something else with this problem. We're going to use the quadratic formula from here because I want to show you what happens with the quadratic formula in case you ever come across this, okay? So everybody write x equals -b just means 1. Plus or minus the square root of -1 squared is 1, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is a -1, all over 2 times 2, which is a 4. Okay, now you would grab your calculator and you would put that in, and you get x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 9 over 4. Somebody tell me what I do now. Square root of 9 is 3, right? So that's x equals 1 plus or minus 3 over 4. I want to say something that's big right now. Listen, if this root, I'd love to see if this makes sense to you. If this root goes completely away, if this is a perfect root, the second I realize that, I understand that I could have factored it. Who says that makes sense to me? I understand that. Yay. Okay, writing your answer as 1 plus or minus 3 over 4, you're not done. So that's 1 plus 3, which is a 4 over 4, or it's 1 minus 3, which is a -2 over 4. But guys, you get the same thing because 4 over 4 is your 1, -2 over 4 is your -1/2. You're going to get the same answer either way. Okay? Who says I gotcha? Let's see. Okay, great. Last problem and then we're done, okay? To find the x-intercept, you let y be a 0. To find the y-intercept, you let x be a 0. Oh, I'm changing this problem, by the way. Cross it out if you would and write down y equals 3x a second plus x minus 1. So if x is a 0, then this goes away and this goes away and you get y equals -1. Easy. Now we have to let y be a 0. So everybody go 3x to the second plus x minus 1 equals 0. Freeze for a second. Can you glance at that and say, it's not going to factor? Can you do that? I want to get you to the point where you can. Look, 3 goes to 3 and 1. 1 goes to 1 and 1. It's going to be 3 and 1. Do 3 and 1 subtract to give me 1? No. If I flip-flop it, it's still just 1 and 1. So there's not going to be even a second option. I know it's not going to factor. Who says I just understand what you just said through? Okay, great. Okay, let's quadratic. So x equals -1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared is 1 minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is a -1, all over 2 times 3 is 6. Never write it in decimal form unless you have permission. How do you get permission?
Instructions.
It tells you. Did it tell you decimal? No. So I have no permission. So I put that in my calculator and I get x equals -1 plus or minus the square root of 13 all over 6. Now, if it's a plus or minus, you can't put a plus or minus in an ordered pair. You've got to do 2 ordered pairs. So this is -1 plus the square root of 13 over 6, comma 0, and -1 minus the square root of 13 over 6, comma 0, and we're done. That's it. Okay, look at the time. I just about nailed it. I thought it'd be 20 and it is 22. So I'm 2 minutes over. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are